Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Capture Studio, where we're live again. Last time we met, I mentioned that we were working on releasing version 23.1, which subsequently we also did. So that one is already out there with several enhancements. So if you haven't already updated your Capture installation, make sure to do that. I also mentioned that we were going to attend the trade show in South Africa, in Johannesburg. Vangelis has reported back that the show was great, so shout out and thanks to everyone who came to visit us down there. Today we will be focusing on paperwork and plotting in particular. We are going to go through pretty much, well, 90% of the plotting features in Capture, I would say. The way we're gonna go about it is that I've divided it in a few segments, and I will try to answer as many of your questions as possible in between these segments. So if you have any questions, make sure to write them down in the comments field below the video, and I'll pick up on them between the segments and try to answer as much as possible. It may be that you ask something that I am about to explain slightly later, then I might save that for later. But yeah, we'll try to cover as many questions as possible. So I'm going to dive straight into it. And what I have here is I've prepared a very basic design. It consists of 4 fixtures, so indeed quite basic. But we're going to use this as a tool to discover the paperwork and plotting features of Capture. The first thing we're going to take a look at is the plot mode. So this is a view mode available in all of the views, which I'm sure you may have seen already. It features the white background and a distinctly different rendering of many items. I will maximize this so it's easier to see. So we have 2 big differences visible immediately. One of them is that the truss is rendered in an outline style, and that the fixtures render with proper plot symbols rather than the rather dull 3D shapes that we would have in wireframe. So the first thing we're going to look at in terms of adjusting or tweaking the design when in plot mode is something that we call plot adjustments. Plot adjustments are enabled using the on-off switch that appears on the top right corner of the navigator when an object is selected and in paper mode. If I enable plot adjustments and move a symbol, then this does not actually affect the visualization or the CAD design if you want. So as you can see here, the actual fixture, so to speak, remains in position as I move this symbol with plot adjustments enabled. This is very powerful in situations where symbols are close to each other, it's a bit cluttered, or if you have fixtures in a vertical stack and you need to explode the view to see the individual fixtures. But this is available not only for fixture symbols, but actually it's a central concept in the entire paper view that you could actually move anything as a plot adjustment without ruining the actual design. Also notice that as this truss is selected, there's a shadow rendered that shows where the original location of that truss was as a help. And in the event that you fiddle around a bit too much and you want to reset things, then the reset plot transformation action is your friend. That will snap back anything that you've adjusted to its original position. So speaking of adjustments, as you can see in plot mode, there's a lot of paperwork related information shown by default without me having to do anything. So in this design, I've already entered some channel, unit, circuit, and patch information, and this appears automatically in the plot view. This is one of the big benefits of working with a software that integrates the design, visualization, and paperwork as a package. So, design, paperwork, and visualization at the same time. And of course, if I go about here and edit, change the channel numbers or the circuit numbers, this is automatically updated in the views. So that's the end of the first block, and I'm going to continue to the next part. No questions so far. So far so good, it seems. Now, suppose you want to print this or send this to someone, then you would need to create an actual plot. I mean, one option, of course, would be to simply save the image from this view or take a screenshot, but that's probably not what you want. So the way to actually create a new plot is to go to the Design tab and select the Plots branch, right-click, and choose Add New Plot. We double-click on the plot to open it, which reveals a blank piece of paper. The first thing I would recommend that you do when you've opened a brand new plot is to use the page setup function. This ensures that you have the correct paper size and orientation, not only when editing, but also for your printer or PDF writer or whatever you're using. So in this case, if I want to send someone a PDF, I've got Qt PDF installed. I can choose that. This has an option of an A2 landscape, for instance. So now I know that as I'm editing, it is already prepared for the A2 landscape format. So the next thing I would do is to actually add some content into this view. We do that by right-clicking, and this reveals an insert menu. And the typical thing to insert is a view. A view is much like a design view, one of the three regular design views, with the difference that you can't actually select anything inside the view. You're working with a view in its entirety. There are some buttons down here that are slightly different than the ones you would see in the regular design view. And that's because we're now also able to navigate inside this view here, as well as access the selection and modification actions that we're used to in the navigator. Now, the default view that comes in is a top view. This can be changed. So on the right-hand side here, we have some properties for whichever inset is selected, and this is where you could change the view into another kind of view if you wanted to add a perspective view or a section view, for instance. There are more things we can do in the plot editor, but we're going to get back to that as I'm going to jump back to the design view again and see if we have any questions. So as I said at the beginning of the webcast, I will be trying to answer questions throughout the webcast. So write your questions in the comment field, and in these short breaks, I'll try and answer them to the best of my abilities. And the first question we have is actually related to something I'm about to show right now. So I'm going to do that, and this relates to what we call annotations in Capture. Annotations are additional information for an object which is displayed like a tail next to the object itself. So the annotation of a fixture is this tail here with the circuit patch and channel number. Now there is this general concept in Capture that you can double-click on things that consists of multiple things to select these parts individually. So if you double-click on one of the annotations, you can select that by itself. That means if we have the plot adjustments enabled, that I can actually move the annotation separately from the fixture, as well as rotate it, of course. So the question was whether the fixture number, and I would assume the person asking the question means the unit number, that is the text written at the center here, which would be conventional Mark II in this case, whether it will be possible to move that in the future. Now, I can't predict the future, but I have a good gut feeling. And I would say that most probably yes, but it's difficult to say exactly when. It's probably not our top priority at the moment. But we are definitely looking into more ways of configuring the way that text is visible. Because as we can see in this symbol, yeah, there are some lines behind the text, and with some symbol that makes it more difficult to read, which probably is the reason you are asking to move the text to begin with. So yes, it's quite possible. So we've started moving some annotations here, so let's talk more about annotations. Annotations are available for pretty much any object type in Capture. I have the truss selected here now, and among the plot properties of the truss is the annotation field, where we could write anything we want, and this will appear as an annotation for the truss that we could then place where we wish. This would probably be more something like a pipe number or a truss construct number or something like that. In the case of the truss, we have some extra options available. They are to automatically show the type of the truss, in this case an FD34. There is also the option to automatically show the dimensions of trussing. So this is an FD34 of 3 meters. All right, so that's that about annotations. Let's talk a little bit about coloring. So coloring, of course, is a powerful tool in larger plots to separate different types of items in a drawing. In this project here, I've already made use of 2 layers. And layers is a nice way of categorizing items in your design and applying color to them. So when it comes to layers and layer color in Capture, we differentiate between the colors in a wireframe view from the colors in a paper view. So I have all the fixtures in the fixtures layer, which I can choose a color for in wireframe and still have another color for the paperwork. And actually we have 2 colors to choose from. It's the outline color and the solid color. So I've got a darker blue and a lighter blue for the fixtures layer, which is what's used here. So that would be our primary way of coloring the plot. However, there is one more option when it comes to fixtures, which can be quite interesting depending on the type of project you have. And that is the color by filter property, which is available for fixtures. And what this does is it picks up filter colors and applies this or uses that as the color of fixtures. So in this project, we've got 2 conventionals with a Roscoe 26 and Lee 147. And as you can see, the colors of these filter come through and colors the symbol in the plot. Whereas the other 2 fixtures here, well, they don't have any filters on them, so they're white. So speaking of symbols, actually let me just undo the coloring option I did. So speaking of symbols, in the event that you don't fancy the symbol use for a fixture, you can actually exchange the symbol. And in the library, if you go under Symbols, Fixtures, you could pick the symbol of another fixture. There are also a couple of folders with generic symbols, like the USITT symbols, where I might prefer the enhanced symbol for one of the profiles. If I'm a fan of the Dean standard, I might prefer the large Fresnel symbol for one of the Fresnels. So just as with filters and gobos really in Capture, simply choose another symbol, drag and drop it on a fixture, and it swaps the symbol. Another property of fixtures that is very useful is the direction snap. As you can see, if you look carefully in this design, all the fixtures have been focused, so they have a rotation relative to truss. Now, these rotations, especially in a big project, they will be all over the map, so it could make the paperwork look slightly unclean. And that is the purpose of the rotation snap. Sorry, the direction snap. If I turn off direction snap, you can see all of the fixtures now have an angle. Whereas if I choose any of the other options here, I can clean up the angles available. So I might even go for a 180 degrees vertically option. This means all fixtures will be pointing either north or south. And the default value is 30 degrees. But there are several options here you can play with depending on your needs. All right, so I'm approaching my second questions moment here. As I said in the beginning of the stream, I'm trying to answer some questions as well, so if you have any questions, please write them in the comments field, and I will get to them at regular intervals. And we do have a question whether this is a paid software or not, and the answer is both yes and no. It is normally a paid software available in 4 packages depending on your project size, but we also have what we call the student edition, which is a free packaging of the software. It has some limitations. They are described on the download page of the student edition. It has a limited library, for instance, so it's not intended for actual productions as much as learning the software or the process of lighting design with this type of software. Right, so moving on, I'm going to go back to the plot editor again, where we were before, and I will change this view type back to the top view. And we will explore some of the other insets that we can add to a plot. The first one we're going to look at is the symbol key. As the name implies, it's the list of the symbols used in the project, explaining the fixture type, as well as listing how many of the fixtures you are using. It lays out automatically depending on the size of the view. So if the list is long, you have a choice whether you prefer it as a long column or as in double columns or even a long strip of fixtures. This pack can be customized in a few ways, and the customization possibilities are all accessed through the properties in this pane here. The most important one for the symbol key is the symbol configuration, where if I double click, I have the ability to go in and customize the text of any of these symbols. Sometimes you have used a fixture type in the project that you don't actually intend to use in reality, or you have another reason to change the text. So that is easily done in here. There are a few options here. You can also completely hide a symbol if you need to do that for some reason, as well as have simply the fixture names without the fixture count. The other options include the ability to simply write a custom text that is appended to the end of the listing, as well as changing the font size or whether you'd like the border to be visible or not. Another inset I will show you, since we were speaking about layers before, is the layer key. This is extremely simple, but lists a bunch of layers in the project with their colors. So in the event that you have used layer color to code important information, you can have that explained next to the colors on the plot here. So I'm going to switch back again to the main user interface, if you may, and move on to some other topics. And we had a question there, which it seems I just answered. So yes, if you wish to abbreviate the fixture type name, the place to do that would be in the configuration of the key. Yes. And furthermore, it's been asked, it would be nice to have user-defined fields for the header. So I didn't actually add a header, but I can do that. The header is the second option in this drop-down. And this is the, well, the header, obviously, showing information about the project. Things like the project date, the drawing version, and so on. And a lot of this information is picked up from the project properties. So if we select the project in the design tab, there are some properties here that are transferred automatically into the header. And the question was, or the request rather, is to have the ability to add custom fields in here, and that I can confirm is a top priority actually. Furthermore, we have a question in Swedish. Yay. And that's a very long question. I might have to get back to that later, since I'm so focused at the moment here. So there are more questions, whether it's possible to make the header vertical, and the answer to that is no, it's not possible. It is high on the wish list, of course, but this is not possible, no. Right, so moving on. Another area of interest when you're working with plots is dimensioning and measurements. So the way we've tackled that in Capture is by providing a distance and angle measure in the library that we can drag and drop into the design, like this. Now you will notice that this measurement is 2 meters by default. And if you go into the properties in the design tab, it is editable and you could enter any distance you wish here. However, in reality, what you often want to do is you want to measure a distance, so you don't want to enter numbers and guess. And the way you do that in Capture is that you double click on one of the ends of the measure, and then you can snap that to your design to easily measure any distance. So you can easily add multiple measurements for different points using the snap feature. Now, again, Capture in plot view is full of annotations, and the measurement is no exception. So we have the distance here, which is 1.14 meters in this case, and I can actually double click on the value of the measurement, enable plot adjustments, and move this text as needed as well. So that's quite good to know. We also have some options for the precision of the measurement. In some cases, it's not interesting to go down to the centimeter level here. So you can actually choose whether to go all the way down to the millimeter, stop at centimeters or inches, or optionally stop at decimeters or feet. All right. I'm not going to show you the angle measure. It is very similar to the distance measure. I'll leave you to play with that. So I will be moving on to symbols. I've already shown you how to change the symbol of a fixture in the plot by dragging another symbol from the library onto the fixture. But what I would also like to show you is that it's possible to add a symbol without any fixture. And there's a few ones here under the illustrations category that are quite useful. For instance, the rigging point symbols, which you can drag and drop in the design. Oops. Undo. You want to be careful with, when you're working with plot adjustments, you want to pay attention whether they are on or off, or you may end up making inadvertent plot adjustments where you actually wanted to move the real rigging point to another location. Now something interesting is happening here, by accident actually, but it's good that it is, because then I can show you another feature. Now as I insert this rigging point, it's actually inserted at floor level here, which means that it ends up under the truss in the plot view. Now the obvious solution would be to move the rigging point above the truss, which would make sense anyway, but it allows me to show another feature. If I were to plot a lot of rigging points, I might create a layer for the rigging points and make sure my rigging points are in that layer. So layer rigging points. And then I could set another paper priority for this layer. If I give this layer a high priority, it means that it will render on top of any truss. It would have been swell if it actually did that as well. That's obviously a bit of an embarrassment. So just move the rigging point above the truss for now. So we have a number of illustrations here. Apart from the rigging point, we have things like the information icon and the warning symbol. And again, you can use annotations. So if you want to say something here is careful with the stairs, then this pops up as an annotation, which of course you can position where you would like around this symbol. So that is one powerful way of enriching your plot with textual and icon-based information. And it seems we have some questions here, so I'm going to cover that before I move on. The first one is whether we will save the stream for further watching, and yes, indeed we will. It will be available here on Facebook as well as on our YouTube channel. And we have a question on inserting views in the plot editor. It would be nice to have the ability to rotate the view 90 degrees, and that is actually our intention, is to have the ability to rotate any inset just as you would rotate objects in the design view here. So yeah. And then there is a question related to camera movement, using a hotkey to move the camera. Yeah, so I will, it's not actually paperwork related, but anyway. So you can use the middle mouse button at any point to move the camera, as I'm doing here. So you may notice my mouse is not actually on the rotation button, but I can use the middle mouse button to achieve camera movement. And if you're on a Mac and your mouse doesn't have a middle button, you can do some interesting configurations in the system settings to achieve this anyway, actually. That I might have to cover separately though. All right, moving on. If you are working, well, I was going to say on a large plot, but on any plot really, you may find at some point that you think that, or the text is too small for your needs, and you would like to scale up the text in annotations or in the paperwork in general. And the tool for you in this case is called plot styles. So by using plot styles, we have the ability to configure a number of things. And one of them is the size of text. So if I wanted to increase the size of text to, let's say, 120 millimeters, so you may notice here that this text size is actually real life sized. And when I apply this plot style to a view, I think you will see what that means. So if I make the text size 3 decimeters, you can see that the text size is roughly the same size as the FD34 truss, which is around 30 centimeters. So obviously we can enter different text sizes here. We could have larger size for the measurements and the symbols and so on. We also have the ability to choose what type of information we want to include in the plot here. So It may be that you want to print one plot with only channel numbers or one plot with only the patch. The way you would do that is by filtering out the unwanted information using this plot style. And one of the reasons you can create multiple plot styles and that you want to preview them in the design view here, so as I switch to another plot style which has the default settings, you can see the look is reverting back to where we were before. So one of the reasons, I'm repeating myself, one of the reasons you want to preview these different ones is that in the plot editor, in the view, not that view, that view, here is the choice for the plot style. So you can even have multiple views in the same plot that are using the different plot styles. Yeah. This didn't come out as clear as I wanted, but so now you can see that we have the two views have different plot styles applied to them. So I'm going to cover a couple of questions again before I continue. As I said before, keep them coming in the comments field. Sorry I missed that part. How did you get your truss annotations to be on the side above the truss and not in the center? So I have this piece of truss here, and as you can see, the annotation, I've moved that now to the top right corner. So the way I do that is I double click on the annotation to select only the annotation. I enable the plot adjustments. And when I've done that, I'm able to move the annotation where I'd like it to be. On that topic, actually, there's a very nice shortcut in the selection actions menu, which is called Select Only Annotations. So I have 4 fixtures selected now, and if I use this function, it immediately selects only the annotations, so I can move them all together at once. Right, that was just a side note. And finally, if we are able to resize symbols like the power bolt, to which the answer is no, this is not possible. So that covers pretty much everything I wanted to go through. There may be a few esoteric paperwork features left in the software, but those are the ones that I wanted to go through today. I know there is one question left in Swedish, but I'm simply not able to process that at the moment, so I'll have to get back to that in text mode. So thank you very much for watching us tonight, and I hope to see you soon again. Stay safe and enjoy Capture. Good evening.